The first rule of the galaxy wasn't written in any charter. It wasn't carved into the obsidian columns of the Council Rotunda on Corvinus Prime. It wasn't encoded into the trade accords or stapled to the back of diplomatic immunity forms. It was spoken quietly, like a campfire story. Don't attack the human children. For 72 standard cycles after first contact, humanity had been tolerated. They were loud. They were emotional. They negotiated like gamblers and fought like cornered wolves. Their freighters ran on overclocked engines and profanity. Their admirals drank something called bourbon during ceasefire talks and named carrier groups after mythological beasts and ex-spouses. They were unpredictable, but manageable. The first time a human child appeared in the Galactic Council chamber, brought as part of some cultural outreach stunt, half the species present recoiled. Soft skin. Forward-facing eyes. Tiny frame. It clutched a plush animal and stared up at beings that had shattered planets. It smiled. 3 cycles later, a minor pirate consortium vanished after raiding a human kindergarten transport near the Perseid corridor. No battle debris. No distress beacon. Just absence. That was when the whisper started. Don't touch their young. Most empires took the hint. The Carthuan hegemony did not. They were old warlords, the Carthuan. Chitan armored, four-armed, born into a culture where conquest was courtship and surrender was genetic failure. Their fleets had reduced the Vrax combined to rubble and turned the moons of Tesh into molten rings. They respected only strength. And humanity, in their estimation, looked soft. The dispute began over something small. It always does. A mineral-rich asteroid cluster on the edge of human space. Survey rights contested. Trade lanes disrupted. A human mining guild filed formal protest. The hegemony responded with a demand for tribute. The Galactic Council convened. Voices rose. Mandibles clicked. Tentacles gestured dramatically. The human ambassador, a grey-haired woman with tired eyes, said calmly, "We are prepared to negotiate." The Carthuan envoy leaned forward, chitin scraping against stone. "You mistake us," it hissed. "We do not negotiate with prey." That line made it into a dozen news cycles. It also made it into a classroom on a colony world called Haven's Reach. Haven's Reach was almost offensively peaceful. Rolling farmland. Shallow blue seas. Wind turbines turning lazily against a gold sky. Population density low. Infrastructure modest. A model of frontier domestic life. 38% of its residents were under the age of 16. That statistic was publicly available. The Carthuan High War Master, Silthrak, saw it as leverage. "Strike the periphery," he ordered aboard his flagship, the Devourer of Suns. "Make an example of their softness." A junior strategist hesitated. "There are significant juvenile populations on Haven's Reach." Silthrak's mandibles flexed. "Then they will learn young." The fleet translated into the system at dawn local time. Human orbital monitoring stations registered the arrival within seconds. On Earth, deep beneath the basalt plains of Luna's southern pole, an alert chimed in a quiet room filled with aging men and women playing cards. One of them glanced at the wall display. Haven's Reach. Multiple hostile signatures. Carthuan configuration. He sighed and placed his cards face down. "Well," he muttered. "There it is." Back above Haven's Reach, the first kinetic rods fell from orbit. They punched through atmosphere in streaks of fire. One struck the coastal city of Brightwater. It erased a school. The second obliterated a pediatric hospital. The third never landed. Because the sky flickered. Not with shields. With interference. Across the planet, every civilian network went dark simultaneously. Data relays severed. Satellite feeds cut. Commercial traffic halted mid-transmission. The Carthuan fleet registered no military mobilization. No defensive grid powering up. No human warships translating in system. Only silence. Silthrak emitted a low clicking laugh. They collapse quickly. But down on Haven's Reach, evacuation protocols older than the colony itself engaged. Playgrounds split open, revealing underground transit tunnels. School basements descended on hidden rails. Farm silos retracted to expose hardened bunkers stocked decades prior. Children moved fast, calmly, as if they had practiced this. Because they had. In a sixth-grade classroom beneath the surface, a red-haired boy sat at a terminal not connected to any public network. He looked small in the chair. He did not look afraid. On his screen, lines of code cascaded in colors too complex for most adults to parse. Above him, alien dropships burned through the clouds. The Carthawoon began planetary landings within the hour. Their infantry marched through shattered streets and smoking suburbs, plasma rifles humming. They found abandoned houses, half-eaten breakfasts, toys scattered across lawns. In the ruins of Brightwater Elementary, a squad entered the gymnasium. Bright murals painted the walls. Planets, stars, cartoon animals in spacesuits. One Carthawoon paused before a crayon drawing taped to the wall. It depicted a monstrous insect creature being kicked into a black hole by a stick-figure human child. The squad leader hissed. Primitive. The lights went out. Not just in the gym. Across the entire Carthawoon fleet. A ripple moved through their command net, anomalous signal injection. Silthrak slammed a clawed hand onto his command console. Report. Our systems are experiencing internal overrides, his tech priest stammered. Navigation pathways, weapon safeties, reactor governors. On Haven's Reach, the gymnasium doors sealed with a metallic shriek. The Carthawoon squad raised their weapons. From the far end of the hall, a door creaked open. 10 children stepped into view. Unarmed. Soot-smudged. Wide-eyed. Silent. The squad leader leveled his plasma rifle at the nearest one. Exterminate. The rifle did not fire. Instead, the armor encasing the Carthawoon warrior began to glow from within. Temperature alarms shrieked in alien frequencies. Internal surge, one soldier cried. Their suits locked. Power redirected inward. The children watched without expression as the squad collapsed, cooked alive by their own systems. In orbit, the devourer of suns shuddered. Targeting arrays recalibrated, away from the planet. Toward fellow Carthawoon vessels. Manual override. Silthrak roared. The main view screen flickered. Then stabilized. A human face filled the display. Freckles. Pale skin. Approximately 10 Earth years old. Behind him, a starfield. You weren't supposed to do that, the boy said evenly. Silthrak's mandibles flared. You are a hatchling. You speak to a war master. The boy tilted his head slightly. We asked nicely, he replied. 472 cycles. Across the fleet, reactor containment fields began to fluctuate. The truth, long buried under trade agreements and cultural exchange programs, surfaced in brutal clarity. When humanity had joined the Galactic network, they had insisted on open educational exchanges. Youth coding initiatives. Cross-species digital literacy campaigns. They had gifted software updates for free. Child-friendly interfaces. Interactive learning platforms. Backdoors wrapped in cartoons. They called it the playground. It had been growing for decades, quietly integrating into every shared protocol, every supply chain management system, every navigational subroutine sold at a discount to developing empires. Only human juveniles were granted root access. Because no one suspects the sandbox. On Haven's Reach, the red-haired boy tapped a final command. Phase 1 complete, he murmured. In orbit, the first Carthawoon dreadnought fired. At another Carthawoon dreadnought. The resulting explosion tore a crescent of fire across the black. Silthrak stared at cascading failure reports. You dare. The boy's image leaned closer to the camera. You broke the first rule. Behind him, more children appeared at terminals across the colony. Across human space, similar signals activated. On Mars. On Luna. On old Earth farms and deep space habitats. Retired soldiers stood up from dinner tables and card games. Hidden arsenals unlocked. Encrypted channels opened. Because the rule had never been about morality. It had been about deterrence. And now, As Carthawoon ships turned their guns on one another and reactor cores spiked toward overload, the galaxy began to remember the rest of the whisper. You can fight human soldiers. You can challenge human admirals. But if you ever touch their children, the children fight back first. The first Carthawoon dreadnought died screaming. Its spinal cannon charged for a planetary strike that never came. Instead, its own targeting matrix reclassified the Devourer of Suns as a hostile object. The beam lanced across vacuum and tore through its sister ship's flank, venting atmosphere and boiling thousands of warriors alive. For 3 stunned seconds, the Carthawoon fleet held formation. Then the cascade began. Contain the override. Silthrak roared as consoles spat sparks and alien glyphs flashed red. Purge all external network pathways. We have purged them, his tech priest shrieked back. The intrusion is not external. It wasn't. The playground wasn't invading from outside. It had always been inside. Decades earlier, when the Carthawoon hegemony purchased efficiency upgrades for its logistics AI, software optimized for trade with human partners, it had installed a friendly little subsystem labeled Educational Compatibility Layer. It was designed to let human children participate in interstellar cultural exchanges. It was adorable. It was lethal. Across the fleet, reactor governors began receiving conflicting instructions. Navigation arrays recalculated microjumps that placed cruisers in collision courses with their own carriers. Point defense systems identified escape pods as incoming ordnance. Silthrak slammed his claws into the armrests of his command throne as the Devourer of Suns lurched violently. Shut down the primary reactor. We cannot. The command chain has been reassigned. To whom? He snarled. The answer appeared on the main screen. The freckled boy again. Calm. Bored, almost. Hi, he said. You're still connected. Silthrak felt something cold coil in his thorax. You think this is war? The War Master hissed. This is sabotage. Cowardice. The boy blinked. You bombed a hospital. Silence filled the bridge. Behind the boy's image, more human children sat at terminals in hidden bunkers beneath Haven's reach. Some were crying quietly. Some looked angry. All of them kept typing. Phase 2. A girl's voice asked off-screen. The boy nodded once. Across the Haven's reach system, Carthawoon vessels attempting emergency translation found their jump coordinates rewritten mid-sequence. Instead of returning to hegemony space, they vanished into dead regions between stars, uncharted gulfs seeded years ago with automated human observation posts. Not destroyed. Exiled. A lesson, not an extinction. On the surface of Haven's reach, Carthawoon ground forces were discovering that the silence of an abandoned suburb could be more terrifying than open resistance. Squads moved through farmland, weapons raised. Their boots crushed children's bicycles and shattered garden ornaments. They scanned for life signs and found only faint thermal echoes retreating underground. Then their armor systems began to fail. Power fluctuations first. Then targeting reticles spinning wildly. One unit's IFF system abruptly reclassified every other Carthawoon biosignature in range as hostile. Plasma fire erupted in a wheat field as a platoon tore itself apart. From a hill overlooking the chaos, an elderly human man lowered a pair of binoculars. His name was Samuel Carter. 73 years old. Retired Marine. Widower. He adjusted the strap on the old rifle slung over his shoulder and spoke into a comm bead barely visible in his ear. Network effects are spreading groundside. They're shooting each other. A young voice replied, steady despite everything. Confirmed, Grandpa Sam. We're isolating clusters to prevent collateral damage. He grunted approval. Don't get fancy. A pause. Too late for that. High above, 3 surviving Carthawoon cruisers managed to sever internal network links and switch to analog backups. Crude. Manual. Brutal. They stabilized long enough to reorient their weapons toward Haven's reach. Orbital bombardment solutions locked in. In the bunker beneath Brightwater's ruins, warning klaxons sounded. The red-haired boy looked up from his terminal. They've gone dark. Manual control. A teenage girl beside him swore under her breath. Old school war. She switched screens, waking the Barnes. Across Haven's Reach, something stirred. Wind turbines pivoted, not to catch the breeze, but to align with orbital vectors. Grain silos split along hidden seams. Irrigation towers retracted, revealing hardened barrels beneath camouflage plating. Railguns. Hundreds of them. For decades, humanity had allowed the galaxy to believe they did not militarize nursery worlds. Technically, they hadn't. The guns were civilian infrastructure. Agricultural stabilization systems. Climate regulators. Multipurpose kinetic dispersal units. Now they fired. Tungsten slugs accelerated to relativistic speeds, punched through the atmosphere and struck the nearest Carthuan cruiser before its crew could even register targeting alerts. The ship folded inward, hull plates crumpling like foil, then detonated in a white flash. The second cruiser attempted evasive maneuvers. The playground reactivated just long enough to adjust its thruster output by 3%. The railgun volley met it mid-roll. The third cruiser got a shot off. A beam of coherent plasma lanced down toward a rural evacuation zone. Samuel Carter saw it coming. He didn't think. He didn't shout. He simply whispered, "Not today." The beam struck an invisible barrier 50 meters above the ground and diffused harmlessly across a shimmering dome. The planetary shield flickered into full visibility for the first time. It had never been off. It had merely been selective. In orbit, Silthrak stared at the tactical display. "You had defenses," he rasped. The boy on the screen shrugged slightly. "We had kids." The devourer of suns shuddered as secondary systems began to fail. The War Master felt the ship, his ship, being dissected at the software level by minds not old enough to legally drink on their own homeworld. "You hide behind juveniles," he spat. "No," the boy replied quietly. "You walked into their classroom." Behind him, a new signal spiked into existence at the edge of the system. Multiple signals. Large. Human. In the void beyond the gas giant Thalos, space twisted as the 7th Expeditionary Fleet translated in perfect formation. Black hulls. No bright insignias. No broadcasting fanfare. Warships built for the kind of conflict humanity had prayed it would never need again. On the flagship Resolute Dawn, Admiral Elena Reyes watched Haven's Reach on a tactical projection. Casualty numbers scrolled at the edge of her vision. Her jaw tightened. "Status from the playground?" she asked. A communications officer swallowed. "Juvenile operators report 70% hostile fleet neutralized or displaced. Remaining capital ship is the Devourer of Suns." Reyes nodded once. "Open a channel." On Silthrak's bridge, a second human face appeared beside the boys. Older. Scarred. Eyes like cold iron. "This is Admiral Reyes," she said evenly. "You have violated the first rule." Silthrak straightened, despite the chaos around him. "I will carve your species from the stars." Reyes didn't blink. "You won't." Behind her, the 7th Fleet began advancing. "The children softened you up," she continued. "Now the adults are here." The Devourer of Suns attempted to bring its spinal cannon online one last time. The boy sighed softly. "Permission?" he asked. Reyes hesitated for half a heartbeat. "Granted." Every remaining system aboard the Carthuan flagship surged to maximum output. Then inverted. Gravity collapsed inward. Structural integrity fields spiked beyond tolerance. The ship compressed into a shrinking sphere of incandescent light. Silthrak had just enough time to understand. They had never been fighting humanity's military. They had been fighting its future. The Devourer of Suns vanished. In the silence that followed, debris drifted across Haven's Reach orbit like falling ash. Admiral Reyes looked at the boy still visible on her side display. "You did good," she said quietly. He nodded, exhaustion finally creeping into his young face. "Are we done?" Reyes turned her gaze toward the distant coordinates of Carthuan space. "No," she said. Across the galaxy, encrypted channels flared to life. Human embassies sealed. Trade agreements suspended. Reserve units activated under a clause older than first contact. Clause 1. If the children are threatened, all debts are suspended. All treaties void. All wars personal. On Corvanis Prime, in the council chamber, delegates watched the destruction replay on loop. No one spoke for a long time. Then Ambassador Threx whispered the thought that would echo through 100 civilizations. They struck a nursery world. And somewhere, in dark corners of pirate dens and imperial courts alike, old stories resurfaced. You can bargain with humans. You can even beat them. But if you harm their children, they stop being reasonable. The Carthuan capital, Zarth Prime, had never seen an invasion coming. Its orbital rings bristled with defense platforms. Its moons were hollowed into fortresses. Its sky was a permanent orange glow of industrial furnaces and smelting colonies. Nothing in the galaxy had ever taken Zarth Prime by surprise. Until now. The 7th Expeditionary Fleet emerged from the void in perfect formation. Black hulls with no insignia, no broadcast, no warning. The playground had prepared them. Decades of subtle infiltration, trade software, educational programs, interplanetary learning modules disguised as entertainment, all tools that now activated simultaneously. On every Carthuan command console, the same image appeared. The red-haired boy from Haven's Reach. Freckles dusting his small nose, calm eyes fixed on a galaxy that had underestimated him. You should have read the terms and conditions, he said. Across the surface, human drop pods struck like meteorites, not scattering randomly but calculating optimal strikes against military and industrial targets. Inside them were not children. Not mere trainees. They were veterans. Men and women with grey in their hair, with prosthetic limbs and tattoos from past wars, each carrying decades of combat experience. Each trained to fight under one doctrine: defend the children. On the streets of Zarth Prime, the fighting was brutal and close. Carthuan warriors were terrifying up close, Chitan armored, for arms, bioelectrically charged melee appendages, but human marines adapted faster. Shotguns loaded with flechettes tore through armor joints. Thermite charges disassembled battle suits from the inside. Dark humor ran across open comms as squads communicated through encrypted overlays. "Hey Sarge," one young corporal grunted, ducking behind a shattered streetcar while a Carthuan warrior's arm exploded in fire. "Remind me to send the War Master a parenting book." The sergeant chuckled, detonating a breach charge. "After we finish rearranging his capital." They weren't here to exterminate. They were here to correct. On the Grand War Spire, the Carthuan High Command gathered, mandibles trembling, tentacles twitching. Silthrak survived the initial strike, but now he was surrounded. Admiral Reyes walked calmly onto the observation deck, weapon holstered, human soldiers moving in formation behind her. "You will surrender," she said evenly. One general spat acidic venom at her boots. "We will breed more warriors. We will rise again." Reyes didn't flinch. She tilted her head slightly. "And we will teach our children new games," she said. Outside, orbital feeds displayed the fleet stranded across dead systems, reactors frozen in mid-cycle, weapons locked, unable to target anything but each other. Humanity's message was clear: you thought mercy was weakness, you thought children were shields. They are the sword. For the first time in centuries, the Carthuan High Command felt fear, not for their own lives, but for their species. The surrender came not in pomp or ceremony, but in silence. Weapons dropped. War machines stood idle. Not destroyed, just paralyzed. Humanity had dismantled the Empire without ever needing to destroy a city. They had turned Zarth Prime's own systems against them, revealing that intelligence, strategy, and patience were more lethal than brute force. Across the galaxy, species updated laws overnight. Never attack human children. Not because it was right. Because it was fatal. The 7th Fleet didn't occupy the Empire in the traditional sense. It dismantled the machinery of war piece by piece, shipyards repurposed, cloning vats decommissioned, military academies converted to educational institutes, all under the watchful eyes of those who had once been dismissed as naive humans. And through it all, the children remained at the center. Still learning, still coding, still laughing in their underground classrooms. Admiral Reyes addressed the surviving council members via HoloLink. To those who would challenge humanity, the first rule was not a suggestion. She paused, letting the weight of the statement sink in. It was a warning. In the streets, the human Marines walked alongside civilians, reinforcing the point. They fought for discipline, not vengeance. They fought with cunning and precision, not rage. The galaxy had underestimated them. Again. In a quiet moment, Samuel Carter, the retired Marine from Haven's Reach, looked at the battlefield from a distant hill. "Never hit what you can't handle," he muttered. Behind him, the children watched, small eyes bright with understanding, fingers still typing commands that could reshape entire star systems. The first rule had been broken. The galaxy would not forget. And humanity's adults had just arrived to teach the next lesson. The war lasted 6 days. The occupation lasted 6 months. By the time the 7th Expeditionary Fleet withdrew, Zarth Prime was transformed. The Grand War Spire still stood, but its halls were repurposed as schools and civic centers. Shipyards no longer forged warships, they built freighters and research vessels. Cloning vats once reserved for soldiers were converted to agricultural biodomes and medical research. Humanity did not exterminate the Carthuun. It corrected them. On Haven's Reach, the school was rebuilt, larger, stronger, safer. The gymnasium wall still bore the crayon drawing of the monstrous insect being kicked into space by the stick-figure human child. Now it was framed, preserved. A monument. A warning. The freckled boy, the face of the playground, sat quietly in his new classroom. A math problem glowed on the board in front of him. He solved it absent-mindedly, almost bored. Around him, children tapped keys, coded simulations, and ran subroutines that even the most cunning alien minds would struggle to comprehend. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been fleets or marines. It had never been nuclear arsenals, plasma rifles, or orbital bombardment. It was generational. It was education. It was children who had learned not just how to survive, but how to win. Across the galaxy, encrypted channels remained active. The playground, now a network spanning dozens of systems, continued to watch. Humanity's reserves, trained and armed under Clause 1, remained ready to activate at a moment's notice. At the Galactic Council, Ambassador Threx of the Vey Consortium addressed the assembly. His voice shook, not with fear, but with awe. "What does humanity intend now?" he asked. The human delegate smiled. Not the face of a child, not the freckled boy, but a woman who had fought and survived alongside them. "We intend to raise our children," she said. There was a pause. The weight of that sentence sank over the chamber. "And if another empire forgets the rule?" someone asked, almost too quietly to hear. The delegate's smile didn't falter. "Then our children will handle it." In a quiet farmhouse in Kansas, Samuel Carter locked his rifle away once more. He sat on the porch at sunset, fireflies blinking over the wheat fields. His granddaughter ran past, laughing, a tablet in hand, coding a small AI simulation as she ran. "Grandpa," she called, "can you help me with my homework?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "Sure thing, kiddo." Because the galaxy had learned a final, uncomfortable truth. You could fight human soldiers. You could challenge human admirals. You could even try to outwit human diplomats. But if you ever harmed their children, humanity would not just come for you. Their kids would. And the galaxy would never forget the first rule. Don't attack the human children. Somewhere, deep in uncharted space, an alien pirate captain scrolled through the target list for the next profitable raid. A human colony world blinked green in his interface, population data flashing. Juvenile percentage. High. He deleted the target. "Find someone else," he muttered. And in that instant, across millions of light years, humanity smiled. Because the children were ready. And so was the rest of them. The first rule of the galaxy had been broken once. It would never be broken again. The playground was always watching. And the humans. Always winning.